Welcome to Primetime Conversations. Here's your host, James Tunstall.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. And today we've got a very special guest, someone I've been a fan of for many years, someone I'm hoping to see in the UK pretty soon once the pandemic is finally over. But he is a shock magician, the one and only Mr. Dan Sperry. Dan, how are you doing today?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me on. What's up, folks?
Also, it's this pandemic. I try not to talk about it, but it's something you just cannot avoid because it's just been such a life-changing event for everyone in every field. How's it been for yourself? I know last year must have been pretty brutal.
Yeah, it's like most people that you've probably spoken to that are in entertainment and such. It was a pretty crazy, time for everybody, of course. But usually, like entertainment, in a lot of ways, is the first thing to go away, the last thing to come back in that aspect. But it's the one thing people really want more of in historically speaking, like in times of when there was like the depression and stuff that talks about, that's when vaudeville like really flourished and whatever, right, and things like that. And so it's kind of it's weird. It's a weird kind of balance, I guess. People now coming back to that, they're people are able to go back to work for the most part, and such. But then once they're going back to work, now it's like everybody's too scared of going to places. So people that are in like my field or the field of entertainment, trying to put on a show or doing an event, it's still very difficult for us because people either don't want to come, or there's some sort of vaccination requirement to where that despite where people land and what their opinions are of it, it's really not working out great, because even if you require that, people still aren't showing up because everybody knows that even if you are vaccinated, you can still catch it and you can still transmit it. So people still don't, even you can say, we will only welcome vaccinated people. It's not helping because people still know like it's gonna, transfer. And so that it's not doing any favors in that capacity either. So it's still kind of, weird time to be in entertainment in that way. I mean, a lot of people went to stuff like this, podcasting and doing, virtual type, events and things like that. But it's nothing really beats, being there live and in person, in my opinion,
Yeah, I mentioned to you off camera, I just did an interview with the bass player from Sum 41, and we spoke about it because they didn't do any shows this year even. And I mentioned to him I saw some bands like Alien Ant Farm do the online gigs playing to a virtual audience. And he said it's something we might have to do in the future. He said, but the thing is, and like yourself, we play off the audience so much, it just wouldn't be the same for us.
Yeah, it really is weird. I mean, I did do, some virtual shows, but I didn't really chase it or go after it like a lot of people did, just because it just felt so weird to me, and it wasn't fun for me. And so it's kind of like that saying, if it stops being fun, then maybe there's a problem there. So I knew I wouldn't be able to perform the way I like to, or in a way that I would want to be able to give 100%, in a way of saying. And so, there's always the other side. People are going to say, well, you should always be doing that anyways. You should just be grateful for things. Of course, all things considered, yes. But at the same time, if it starts to become not fun anymore, then then you're in dangerous water,
Yeah, and I remember during the first pandemic when we was in lockdown, and I remember listening to the Joe Rogan show, which I watch every week, and he was on about how stand-up shows, magic shows, for example, they should be classed as an essential business because a lot of people need to go to these places as a stress reliever, because especially as they've been locked in all week or for the past months, for the months and that. So I believe that myself, like stand-up shows and magic shows and everything like that should be an essential business because people do need to go out. But you said that people are scared to go out And I've seen that. I think we've spoken. You're a wrestling fan, and when you watch the wrestling today, it's all half-empty arenas because people are scared to go out.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Or, I mean, in some aspects of the entertainment world where I have friends that work in more like family areas, of events or productions, and I know wrestling would probably fall into this, and this is maybe something they're running into. But for example, like people I know that work on like Disney Live, for example, or like, something, the Wiggles on Ice or whatever, these shows are. They work for those, but they've had to cancel their tours because of things, for example, people are too afraid to go out, or the mandates of, or I think that's the right word, where they're basically saying you have to have a vaccination, proof of vaccination to get in. Well, families don't want to come because their kids maybe aren't old enough, to get a vaccine or something. So they still can't come. So now you're losing, a family of 4 or 5. That's 5 butts in seats. You start doing the math. That's how the place gets filled, and that's how they are able to make their money. And it's a weird time, yeah, for sure, right now, absolutely. And trying to, yeah, I don't know, like trying to do things, yeah, virtually with that in mind, even entertainment. Joe Rogan makes a good point when he says that. I've even noticed, I mean, it could be one of two things. Like, I've even noticed, like, people don't maybe remember how to react live anymore. It's not that they're not reacting. It's like they forget like how to really applaud, or that they can, you're not, we're here in person. You're not muted, in a Zoom call or something. You can, release, you can let that out and do it vocally in person here. Remember how we used to do that, kind of thing. Or either that, or I've just gotten worse and they're just not applauding anymore. So it's like one or the other. I don't know. It could be either way. I'm not sure.
Well, to be fair, Dan, there might be people who's actually enjoying it, not having to socialize, because there's a lot of people who like staying in, for example.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I'm fortunate in what I do because I work outdoors and I still socialize with people, thankfully. So, but which is quite good for being a podcaster because I need to speak, so I need to be able to speak to people. Cool. But how's it in Vegas now? Because I spoke to Rob Van Dam actually a few months ago.
Oh yeah.
Cool dude. And he was mentioning how like you've said, everything. I think this was back in April, I think, and he said a lot of things were still closed down. But how's it been lately? I know you mentioned people are scared, but is a lot more things starting to open up now, or is there been any Omicron?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, they say the mob doesn't like exist and doesn't run Vegas anymore. Like, I think that's fucking bullshit. Like, I totally think that, because I think I just got this feeling like after like the first year, like they got in with all the politicians and went, look, we're going to start opening everything because we can't go through another year without tourism or without, events, conventions. That's how Vegas, makes a lot of its money, is having these, conventions and conferences and events, things like EDC and SummerSlam was even here, and stuff like that. The new stadium was just built. We have a new football team, and stuff like that. So there's lots that was put in, to building. Resorts World just opened. A lot of stuff was in line. Area 15, a huge, events. There's tons of stuff that Vegas was developing, and then this all came down, and of course, everybody played along, initially. But then I think, I have no proof of this, and so maybe I shouldn't talk about it too much. Just watch, like, someone's gonna knock on my door, and you're gonna see me get pulled out for it. But but I totally have like this crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy theory that like the mob was totally like, okay, we're gonna open everything, like leave us alone, like we're gonna, we can't do this again. We got to start making money for all this new shit that we got, So anyways, to answer your question, I think it's opened back up, a bit more. Like we don't have to show proof of vaccination to get in anywhere. You don't have to. You can order at the bar if you want to drink. It's you don't have quite those limitations. Of course, you got to wear masks when you're indoors somewhere. But once you sit down, you can take it off, and of course, I'll just say it, like anywhere, nobody's fucking following these rules. I don't care where you live. Nobody gives a shit. Like, everybody is so full of shit if they say they follow it. No, you're not. Like, you're so full of shit. Nobody's following this stuff. So so here it's definitely the Wild West for the most part still,
Right. And speaking about the Mafia, we will talk about it because it's always it's closely tied to Vegas. I actually watched the movie for the first time a few months ago, Casino. Great film. And
oh, you only just saw that for the first time?
Yes.
I mean, I guess maybe because historically, maybe in the UK, nobody really gives a shit about what happened in the desert,
I suppose, don't get me wrong, I've watched Goodfellas a million times off, top of my head. Similar films, obviously similar stories. And I watched there's a video on YouTube, actually. I forgot the name of it. I'll try and send you the link. And it shows you, like, what things was true in Casino and what wasn't. It was fairly accurate, to be fair, but obviously they've always had those ties to Casino, and obviously with Vegas, sorry, and with the casinos. But, like, without naming names, because I don't want you to get whacked, but have you seen anything where you looked at someone and it's like, yeah, that's definitely something with the Mafia?
Yeah, here in Vegas, yeah. And when I had my off-Broadway show in New York, actually, the guy, he's passed away now. I won't name his name because, of course, there is no Mafia, right? It was all just a bunch of bullshit. But he was the guy that he owned the building, but he, like, basically, like, Disney owned this side of the street. He owned that side of the street. Like, it was like that kind of shit. And so, like, he owned the building that the venue was in, that my theater was in, and then I lived in the apartments above it along with some of the other crew. And he had this it was this facility that opened up, and it was called Times Scare, and it was like this bar, year-round haunted themed bar with a year-round haunted house that you would go through. And it was, initially it was themed through, like, licensing with, like, Halloween and stuff. And then there was my show in there, right? And so I was doing my own show off Broadway in this place. And that guy that was, like, the main money guy behind it, he had the building, he had all the stuff. He, like, it never like really, like, made money. Like, anytime we were getting, well, I mean, I was just a hired gun. Like, so I had no dog in the fight. I still got paid. Like, so, and I didn't complain, not complaining now, but, like, so this is, when I say we, I mean the venue itself was always, like, never making money, or never kind of digging itself out, but it was always investing so much into new shit, where it was just like, something is fucking weird here. And I know at one point I was there during the demolition and construction because they were building the theater around, my branding and setup and whatever. And one of the guys was like, yeah, the old man, he was like the foreman, right? So he's like, yeah, the old man, like, came to me and said, if we pull anything out or open whatever and find anything in the walls and the ceiling, anything that isn't supposed to be there, we're supposed to go to him first and immediately, and I was just like, oh, yeah, haha, very funny, but no, I think that's fucking real. He was like, nah, that's fucking real, yeah. There's stories of the guy, but he was definitely a mob dude. Like, I know he had people killed, absolutely, without question. He was the porn king of New York City. I'll say that. If you can look him up, like I said, he's passed away now, but I'm not. I don't want his family or whatever coming at me.
Now, yeah, that's definitely interesting. Like, when I've watched Casino and loved The Sopranos and things like that, I've really got into it lately. Like, learning about the Mafia and the mob, and wow, it's amazing. It's amazing. Like you mentioned earlier, with things starting to open now, and I can totally believe it that it's them getting involved to open, because the main thing they want is money, and if nothing is open, they're not making money. They're going to be pretty unhappy. So I can totally buy it.
If they're not open to make the money, they can't launder the money, right? So if they can't launder their money, what are they going to do?
How long have you been in Vegas then? When did you move there, Dan?
I permanently moved here in, like, 2006, the end of 2006. but I had been
Oh,
coming out for a while before then. I was like a fill-in act for a guy in a show out here. So when he would take time away, the producer would fly me in and I would fill his spot, and then I'd go back away and such. But I moved here permanently then in the end of 2006. And then I moved away for a couple of years when I did that off-Broadway show in New York City at that Times Square place with the guys. And then I moved back here again when I parted ways with that establishment.
yeah. And like moving to Vegas, obviously we've all grown up and we've watched obviously Ocean's 11 and all them type of movies, and obviously all the classics with like Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra, for example. So
Yeah.
did it like really hit you when you got there and you saw the big bright lights and such?
I mean, no. I mean, I've been a big Frank Sinatra fan for like ever, right? Like I got like tons of like memorabilia. I got like a whole like wall in my house here of all sorts of stuff. But like not as much. So like I'll compare it like this. I grew up in Minnesota, right? But I moved to Chicago first.
Right.
As soon as I turned 18, I moved to Chicago. So like I felt more of like Rat Pack shit in Chicago than I did here in Vegas, because it's pretty much all kind of wiped away and eliminated, even though that's, historically, part of it, that sort of feel is gone. Like now, like the casinos, you go down the strip and the fronts of them aren't the cool, big, ornate, over the top, entrances that you kind of would remember thinking with fountains. And well, granted, there is still the Bellagio, right? But like anything around it now, you look across the street, and now what used to be the entrance to the Tropicana, where they had this like big like turnaround where limos could come in and pull up the, now it's like built out to have like, I think there's like a fucking Wahlburger right there, and a CVS pharmacy, and so it's built out. It's becoming almost more like Times Square now, and it's really kind of lost I think it's lost the character, that it had. That sort of vibe is gone now, and it just is kind of just like any other touristy place or whatever. I honestly never would have moved here either if I didn't have the gig. I'll make that clear as well too. Yeah. So like maybe I'm a little biased because I've never felt like this is home. I've just kind of just been here, yeah, and especially too, like when I was coming here, there were a lot of like the variety type shows, and that's what I was, in as like a specialty act, and those have kind of even gone away now. So now you go see a show, it's not like a variety show of these necessarily crazy incredible acts, unless it's something like Cirque du Soleil, but now it's just all Bruno Mars is here, and and Lady Gaga. It's the same shit you can see in San Diego or in LA or whatever. A lot of that uniqueness, I think, is gone, unfortunately. But not my monkey, not my circus. What are you gonna do?
Cool. So I suppose like you've said on many podcasts, I listened to a few today actually, like how you got into magic. But so I mean, just like for people who hasn't heard your story, like who would you say was your biggest influences? I think you've said it, Lance Guest was one of your main ones, and Copperfield, obviously.
Yeah, Copperfield was and still is, big influence. I wouldn't say an influence, but was like inspiration, I guess you'd say. Someone that who I saw when I was young that got me into it, and then also just from like a I think like just a way to stay relevant, like, because actors can just go act and play in different movies, bands can put out new albums, magicians, even comedians, it's to a degree it's kind of hard to stay relevant. You kind of think back, and there's very few that were able to maintain a relevancy to a degree, and maintain a rise, and once it got to the top, stay there, like a Robin Williams, for example. But then you think of guys though like a Dane Cook, who back in the day here in the States at least, could fill an arena, but now not anymore, whereas someone like a Robin Williams or Eddie Murphy, so, but those are comedians. Let's talk about same like things like with like magicians. they're not able to do that, so much. And Copperfield being able to do that and create and present magic in a different way. I mean, the dude won like 20 Emmy awards, like for magic on TV, not even for magic tricks, but just how it was shot, what they were bringing to the table to make a magical experience, for the viewer, I guess, so from that standpoint, yeah. So Copperfield, but then then there's other guys, just like anything, comedians or wrestlers or bands or whatever. I could name some people, but they're all pretty unheard of, and most of them are no longer here. They're deceased, so doesn't can't even say go check them out at this place because they're not there.
Yeah, one guy, he kind of changed the game a little bit when he first came onto the scene. He was like the hot young guy, I suppose, and he's still doing good shows, I would imagine. David Blaine, have you had cross paths with him much, or?
Yeah. I had never really had a lot of like direct interaction with David Blaine. But we kind of ran in a similar circle, not in a similar circle, but like we knew a lot of the same people, right? We were tight with the same little group, right? And then he was doing some stunt once, and they were inquiring about something with birds, and they'd hit me up, but it didn't end up happening because it wouldn't have worked. But and then but I never spoke with him directly. It was always just through our mutual buddies, right? Yeah. And then he also never done shows. He had just done TV specials and like private, very exclusive, high end, like VIP events and stuff. But it was a few years ago he started building a live show, and that's what he went out and toured with and such, and to a lot of success, because it's like it was kind of like, when Prince didn't tour for forever, and then he just kind of made music in his weird little studio and became Mormon or something, and then he finally started doing concerts again, and it was like, holy shit, right? So kind of like that, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, two of the guys who always stayed on top, obviously, Penn Teller, and you was on Full Us, and I watched it again today, actually, and it was a great spot, and your chemistry with Alison as well, Alison Hannigan, was really great. And
thanks.
It was always going to be so hard to fool them, but your trick was great. But what's it like being on Full Us, and obviously Penn Teller? Besides yourself, I would say Penn Teller is probably my favourites. I would say I do love them. What was it like being on the show and I suppose talking to them?
It was cool. I had known Teller very little, but for a while we had known each other a bit, but not so much. Directly, deeply, personally. It's not like we were having Thanksgiving together, but we had known each other and corresponded, and I'd seen the show and been backstage and chatted, whatever. So we had a pre-existing interaction and knowledge, of each other. Respectful, high-level acquaintances. I wouldn't even say friends. But Penn, I had never had any interactivity with. But a weird backstory is my mother's brother. So his wife's brother. Okay. So my aunt through marriage, her brother had a comedy duo called Puke and Snot. He was, I think, Puke. I can't remember. But they were like these really raunchy, disgusting pirates. And they would tour Renaissance festivals, which are huge over here. I doubt they're that big for you guys. You guys just walk across the street and there's a fucking castle and it's not a big fucking deal.
Pretty much, yeah.
But over here, like it's, fucking a big deal, right? Lots of versions, but big deal. And so they were touring these Renaissance festivals, and there's a huge one in Minnesota. Funny enough, the coffee mug I'm drinking out of is from the Minnesota State Renaissance Festival. So this is a huge Renaissance festival, and Penn and Teller opened for Puke and Snot, and that's how they got their start. Weird, weird story. So my aunt's brother was tight with Penn and Teller when they were starting out, because him and his comedy partner gave them the opportunity to open for them for several seasons and go on the road and stuff. So it was crazy small world. But anyways, yeah. So working with Penn and Teller, though, that I knew going in, I wasn't going to fool them. And I didn't have that intention either. I just needed a platform to sort of showcase myself as a springboard, because at the time I had been with a company for like 5 years, and had been touring with them for the last 3 years of that 5-year situation, basically 10 months out of the year. And it was keeping me, it allowed me to pay off my house. So I'm not trying to say it didn't come without its blessings, but it came with a lot of darkness that I didn't want to be around and deal with. And so I wanted to quit and do other things. And so, but I had been tied up with this show. A lot of the agents and people that I worked with almost had stopped calling me, because they just knew I'd be unavailable, because I was going to be off, I'm off on the road, all the time. And so, because I was exclusively with this one show, right? And I was an act of this, in this show, one of several. And so, so I wasn't, and that had its own limitations. I wasn't able to do what I normally do, how I normally do it, So someone a fan had described it to me as they had been watching me pace inside a cage for the past several years, because of the limiting was starting to even ooze out unintentionally in the thing, right? And so so I had been with them, and so quitting that company and needing an opportunity to just get back out there on a platform, I knew that would be a good one, or a good option, because of the network it was on, and the platform that it was, to try to fool them again. Like I said, I knew I wasn't going to fool them, but I knew I at least had a feeling that because of how it's presented, I could get a lot of time, because of how they make their packages. They do the intro package, you get your TV set, there's going to be some deliberation, which is, uncommon in a lot of these, contest type shows, right? I do this because most of them are bullshit. And so, so that's time, and so just looking at it, saying like, okay, normally if I was going to do a spot on a TV show, I might get 3 minutes. I could have upwards of 9 potentially, with this spot, and again, get showcased, get a good clip, of whatever act I was going to do, and etc. And with already having a basic relationship with Teller, a little bit with Penn, but barely, any. I don't think Penn even ever remembered meeting me, before. So it was like that level. And so, but just knowing that these guys are seem to be cool and pros, and I could work with this, And so in the end, it turned out to be a very nice surprise. I mean, I did save some things, like, when I have to rehearse it, right, with the director and some of the other folks. So we have to do like a blocking walkthrough, so that, the cameras can find, where they should be, to this and that. Not in front of Penn and Teller, though, but you know what I mean? Just for those that need to be a part of it. And you're supposed to go through your set. Well, I didn't go through it completely, because I didn't want to give away anything. I wanted to keep some secrets to get genuine reactions. So like, they didn't know, like, some of the stuff with the blood. They didn't know, like, some of they didn't know I was going to be wearing a bra, things like that. So like, I had all these little things hidden. So because just in case, because I don't know what they're talking about behind the scenes. So I wanted still to provide something for the production people to be caught off guard. You know what I mean? So, and so then and I had never met Allison. I didn't even block it with Allison. I think it was just a mop in a bucket, was supposed to be my Allison. It was something like that, primitive, right? So, and so I had no idea about anything about her. I know she was on like Buffy for a bit or something, and I know she had done the American Pie, movies, which I was never into anyways, so I didn't really know anything about her, and so I was not sure how this was going to go. And also, I don't even have TV, right? So I had never seen an episode of Fool Us, except anything I could catch on YouTube, and I wasn't actively watching it either. So, I mean, I was just kind of familiar with the way the show went, right? and then it was just like a divine intervention that everything just unfolded as perfectly as it did. Like none of that was set up, and none of it was rehearsed or scripted or anything like that. That was just all of us coming together, me, Allison, Penn, and Teller, all coming together and just working. It just unfolded perfectly. Just divine intervention. It's the only way that could have happened, because I've never had anything go so perfect with such little, to no preparation or anything for especially for a TV, one and done. You only get one chance to do it, so don't screw it up, and make sure it goes to to tape, and to have it just unfold that perfect, that was great. And it was because of other people too, like Allison and stuff, and she was genuinely disturbed by that. I later found out that now she has to be not given away, but at least clued in on what she's going to be participating in when they use her. Whereas before it was just, hey, Allison, we're going to use you for that spot. Okay. Now she needs at least a basic understanding of what's going to be required of her, or she won't do it, because she was really disturbed by that spot that we did. And I later found out too that they play that they still play my clip when they're taping Foolish. They play it for the studio audience so that they can get reactions for cutaway shots. So now if you're watching some people and then they're getting a gross reaction, those people might not be reacting to what they're watching on TV. It just might be an edited copy of reacting to me in my polka dot bra or something, maybe.
Yeah, and like obviously whoever wins gets the show in that, but I've always found with these type of shows, the main thing is to stand out, and they done for us over here in the UK. And the one guy, and I think he ended up in Vegas. I don't know if he's still there now, but Piff the Magic Dragon.
Yeah, because he did AGT here, and I think he went to the semifinals. I'm not sure. Obviously, he didn't win, but he did all right. But he got his first before he did AGT. That's right. He did Fool Us, and that kind of really launched virally for him. Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's standard now, and you've referenced it a few times. So I'm going to ask the illusionist, and that's the first time I actually saw you. It was it was 2011 or
2012. Okay.
You done a TV special over here in the UK. Stephen Mulhern was presenting it. I'm trying to think what year it was. Might have been 2012, 2013, because I know it was the year before I got married. And it was the first time I spot you. And once I watched it, I was like, wow, this guy's good. And the one part, and it just amazes me to this day, is when you've got the cloth, the handkerchief, and you just like turn your head quick, and there's obviously you came. And I watched that, and I turned to my mother, because my mother likes magic and stuff like that. And we were watching it, and I'm turned to her, and I'm like, how the fuck? And it's like, I don't know. But you've referenced it a couple of times. So obviously you had a long run with them, but it sounds like towards the end, or I don't know how early on, you mentioned you felt like you was restricted and you needed to get out.
Yeah. It was just it became not what I originally signed on to do, in a way. The original concept and the original presentation was really exciting and really cool and interesting, and we were all the original 5 of us were all involved in trying to find a way for us to all interact together and sort of weave this really cool way of presenting it. And we kind of got there a few times, and then it's like, what do you do? I don't know what I would do if I was in the producer's position, but once the opportunity to go to Broadway and tour in North America and stuff happened, then other investors get involved, and when other investors get involved, more hands are in the cookie jar, and the more hands that are there, might not like how the cookies taste and want to change the recipe, and so then that started happening. And when those people came in, they maybe weren't used to how some people functioned they're operated, in real life compared to who they are on stage, right? And maybe some there might be some rumors that got started, like I think they thought I was on heroin at one time or something, I remember. And then it's just like, then it just got to be icky and stupid. And yeah, so I mean the show just didn't become what I had signed up for. And then just, some people either some people change, or maybe these were the people who they were the whole time and not who I thought, sort of stuff. And this kind of fizzled into a disappointment. Like the phrase I use a lot, not necessarily for this, but you've probably heard it before, when someone says the party is getting crashy. The party's getting crashy, time to go.
Is any of the because I haven't kept up with it now for a couple of years, but is any of the original people still on the show? Is it all been changed now?
I don't know. I know very few. I think Kevin still works with them. Kevin James, the inventor, and I believe Andrew Basso, the escape artist, still does. But I know myself. I think Bret, from the original group, I was not the first one to go, but one of the first ones from the original core that stayed the longest, I think. And like Hobson, he left, and he has his own theater now in California, which is cool. Like his own little like club theater that he opened, which is awesome. Other guys doing it, like Philip Escoffi, the Mentalist. He's doing. I know he helped write stuff for like Darren Brown, and he writes stuff for TV shows a lot and stuff too. So it's like when bands go and do their own thing or whatever. Or like, I don't know. Or like in wrestling, some of us are just back on the indies. You know what I mean.
We'll talk about wrestling then. And I think that's the reason me and you started following each other, because I followed you, and I think because my show's name was That 90s Wrestling Podcast, and then you followed me back. And obviously now I've changed the concept of the show, and still gonna have some wrestlers
at the time. I had just like stumbled upon your stuff. I can't remember how, but like I didn't even know, I don't think at that time yet, that you had seen my stuff on TV or anything. I don't think so. Or if you had sent me a message with that, I didn't see it right away.
Yeah, no, I've been watching your stuff for years. No, I started the podcast last year during lockdown. And basically, I was sat at home for 3 months and I had nothing to do. I'm like, well, I like wrestling. I might as well start a podcast. And originally, it was, and I still do it now, it's reviewing 90s WWE pay-per-views and talk about with all my friends. And we have a good time doing that. And then eventually started interviewing wrestlers, and it's been surreal. Like I mentioned, interviewed Rob Van Dam. If you said that to me 2 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, that's crazy. And you can't ever get starstruck. And like I've had like Eric Bischoff on the show and a few names.
Wow. I'm loving the 86 Weeks podcast, actually. I know people think like Conrad Thompson, he's getting to be a bit much with all these fucking podcasts. Every 2 days he's got a new one. But man, my favorites are actually the Jeff Jarrett, My World one.
Interviewed him a few months ago.
Oh, you did? Man, I love Jeff. I fucking hated him when I was a kid, and not
that
even
was the idea.
Yeah, but like go home heat, like level of hate. Like this guy's just a unlikable motherfucker. Like who is like daddy's boy, like just like he used to like he just wound me up. And like now, like, and I think Conrad had even said the same thing. Like Conrad had just this like despisal of Jeff Jarrett. And now it's like, dude, this guy's actually like really like smart, like cool guy. Yeah. Like I love his podcast and the 83 Weeks. Those are like the two I like to listen to the most,
Yeah, I spoke to Double J a few months ago, and Diamond Dallas Page, which was fucking crazy. So it's in the archives, folks. By the way, a few people's called me the British Conrad Thompson. I'm like, yeah, I need to shift some pounds.
Yeah, it's okay. Maybe. Well, it could be. You could be the British Cornet. I don't know if that's good or that's bad over there. I don't know.
nothing wrong with Corny. He doesn't care what he says. We'll put it that way. He's love him or hate him. He's Marmite, as we call it over here in the UK.
Yeah, that's funny.
But you mentioned SummerSlam was in Vegas. Did you go to it, or was you on the show?
No, I wasn't in town for that. Yeah, I was on a gig, so I didn't go. I had some. I know some friends went and had a good time, I guess. But no, did not make it. Did not make it that to that one.
Yeah, it's wrestling. It's one of entertainment. So it's a very niche product. Very niche, but yeah, I've watched it since I can remember. And I've heard you on an interview. Your all-time favorite, I think, was Bret Hart growing up. So I'm a big Bret Hart fan. Bret Hart, Bret Hart's basically God over here in the UK and in Europe. So yeah, what's your favorite memories of Bret?
Man, I remember like being a kid, and for some reason it was like I think the sunglasses, they either like reminded me of oh my god, from X-Men,
Cyclops.
Jeez, thank you. Yep. From X-Men, or like or RoboCop, or just sunglasses. I just remember like, man, if I could get a pair of sunglasses like Bret Hart, like I would be the coolest guy. And whatever, I'll become a millionaire, or I'll have, I'll have, the coolest car. For some reason, it was those sunglasses that was the first thing that I remember just being like, that's a cool guy, and I just always, I don't know, something about just the sharpshooter was just visually. And again, I'm a kid, right? So I don't know words to describe. But I remember thinking, watching the sharpshooter get applied was really like, I didn't know what like a oh shit moment was, yet maybe, but I've just, you could feel this slow build to like to this, like it's like starts wrapping the legs, and you're like, oh shit, it's fucking, here it comes, and rolls, and when he would sink in, it's like the sink. It kind of was just as very well choreographed, I guess. I don't know, like applied submission. I always loved submissions. Like when my friends and I would backyard wrestle, I always wanted to come up with a cool submission, because I don't know, maybe it's because it's just, not only is it physically overpowering your opponent, there's like, I think maybe like this emotional and psychological torment behind it, like it's like being a kid and being forced to say uncle. I don't know in the UK if you guys have probably some, it's like say uncle, say uncle, like it's like the grown-up version of say uncle is a submission, and so yeah, that's like, I just remember too, like sharpshooter and and that's what eventually really got me into following more of Bret, and his career. And then of course, the whole Montreal screw job, going down, and at that time I was actually I was watching WWEF, whatever, at the time. But I was actually watching more WCW, of course, because they had all the NWO stuff blowing up, and everybody was going over there, so of course we're gonna watch them. So I wasn't really following so much of what was going on, but I was still aware, of Bret and stuff. And then so you can imagine my excitement and immediate disappointment when Bret Hart came to WCW. Not, but yeah. So yeah, Bret Hart.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him on. I actually interviewed obviously his daughter's Natalia Neidhart, and I interviewed her husband, Tyson Kidd, and I said to her, I was like, please help me get Bret. He said, I'm going to try, James. But I also got another podcast I do with wrestler Rene Dupree, and he said, I've got Bret's email. I'm going to try and get Bret. He said, because I know what you're going to be like. So if I spoke to Bret, I'll just pack in the podcast. I'm like, yeah, it's never going to be top. This is it now.
Dude, yeah, that was great.
But that's awesome. But what you said, you watch a bit of today's stuff. What do you think to today's wrestling? And I suppose you talk about AEW. What's your thoughts on it?
Man, I'm gonna say this. I know, like, I think Brian last said this, if I remember right. It was on one of the corny drive-throughs or something, where he said the best stuff in wrestling is on AEW, but the stuff that they fuck up is the worst stuff. And I kind of have to agree. I wouldn't say it's the worst, but some of it is a bit waka waka. But I am 100% in, all in on AEW. I'm a total AEW mark. And I'm in 100%. I remember I was on the road still quite a bit when they were forming and building up and having the first pay-per-view in Vegas, right? And just being like,
Right.
man, I would, how cool would that be? And then, seeing that, here's, Jericho is coming over and they're it was like, like almost like a band that is kind of a relatively famous independent band, never got its break, finally signed the record deal, kind of thing. So it's like you kind of and now it's getting radio play, and all your other friends are like, hey, I'm into this band now, and it's like, motherfucker, I've been listening to that band since they start, so I'm not saying that's how I'm reacting to people that say they're in the AEW. I'm encouraging them to watch it. But but it's that feeling of like, man, I remember, when it was getting going, and of course with someone like Tony Khan behind it, how could they really let it fail so quickly if they did? But you didn't know where it was going. You didn't know what was gonna happen. Because at the time, obviously they they didn't have CM Punk, or they didn't have, they weren't acquiring in that fashion yet. It was still just a lot of just kind of indie dudes, or I guess sprinkling of Impact guys and whatever, so they had, some folks, and some of the bigger names, like Mox and Jericho and Young Bucks and whatever, Cody and shit. But now I think I think it's great. I've been like their championing them, from the beginning, and I like too that it's not. I just like too that it's privately owned. It's not publicly traded like WWE, so you don't have a bunch of yahoos blowing in your ear with their stupid bullshit fucking comments, like stupid opinions that nobody asked for or cared about, And the thing too about it is they're getting talked about, really. Nobody, I mean, I shouldn't say nobody, but the people. I think it was Simon Miller actually that said this. Maybe I don't remember it right, but he said, like, doesn't matter what you review, but people are talking about AEW, and even if you're praising them or shitting on people, that's where the most listens are coming in on. Even people are listening, they're keeping their eye on it. They don't care what's going down on SmackDown or Raw anymore. Even it's just like whatever. So I think so. It's kind of like the any press is good press as long as they spell your name right sort of idea. I think that Tony Khan's going with, and letting them, by the sounds of it, letting them just have, them being, I guess, the roster, have more, freedom with what they can do, what they can say, what they can, get away. Like, even though it was ridiculous, unfortunate, it was an unfortunate, thing, but the exploding ring, death, like, you would never see that anywhere, So when Omega, like, first talks about it, it's like, oh, dude, yeah, because these guys, they've, toyed with this over in Japan to a degree. Like, this would never. When would this happen? This is awesome, And unfortunately, it shit the bed. But it was still just the fact that they're doing it, is cool. The fact that Tony's licensing these songs, so many songs for these acts, or these different wrestlers, characters, whatever you want to call them, the different talent. I think that's cool too, and important for sure.
Yeah, and at first, I was iffy on AEW. I think it was because I saw Marco Stunt, and I was like, oh god.
Oh my god. Yeah, I'm sure he's a nice guy, but what the fuck? Go. Sorry, but no.
And I left it for a few months, and I tuned back in. And when they started signing a few more people, I'm like, well, I know this person's good. I know that person's good. And when CM Punk came back, that was a big one. I was like, well, CM Punk is finally back. The thing, there's only one thing I don't like about AEW. It's the fans, especially on Twitter. They I'm not,
Yeah.
and I'm not using this term loosely, but they are fucking idiots. It's like they'll just say things. I don't know. Trent Beretta is better than I don't know Roman Reigns or someone like that. I'm like, no, calm down. But,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. When I say like I'm a total like Mark and all radio, I'm not like I do see. I will say I do see the flaws in it. You know, absolutely. You know, and I do see like some of like oh god, like some of the booking. Like there is a lot of stuff I will say. I know Cornette's like out of his freaking mind, but there is some stuff I am totally 100% with him on. Like this stuff with Rio right now. Like, are you Rio is like the Marco stunt. You know, like, are you kidding me? She's basically like wearing coffee filters, scotch tape to her wrists, and like, you know, and like this is what's, you know, like when Punk was like saying about MJF, like this is your guy. Like I'm like looking at like Tony Khan and you know the AEW board of who gives a shits, you know, going like this is who you're like going by. Granted, now you know they're getting their women's division, you know, built up quite a bit and stuff, but like Rio really okay. I don't see it, but okay. Ridiculous.
Hey Dan, if ever I'm thinking about opening up another wrestling podcast, me and you's gonna have to do an AEW review show.
Yeah, I tried doing an AEW review once, I remember, and there was just too much. Like it would ended up being 40 minutes, and I was like, that's edited down. You know, I was like, there's just too much shit and so many rabbit holes. You know, the other thing about AEW that is a bit much is there's too much. Like I get that they're excited about like a lot of these layers and long-term storytelling and layering them up and everything. Totally cool with that. Tarantino it up. I don't care. But like keep it to like the two like programs, you know? Like if I got to start going down YouTube shit and like what? Like just keep it keep it easy. Because I don't even have a regular job, right? I can't imagine like fans that are like trying to watch this that actually like maybe that someone's like a UPS driver, let's say, for example, who maybe works crazy hours or, you know, Amazon delivery guy, I don't know. And then has, you know, wants, you know, come home, wants to watch his wrestling and stay up to date with the stories. But now it's like, now I have to go to YouTube and watch Private Party and Joey Janela, like just to get, you know, a start. Nothing against Private Party and Joey Janela. I'm just trying to think of like a dark, you know, team that only you would see on Dark. But you know what I mean? Like now you got to sit through some, you know, Waka bullshit just to figure out one nugget of something that the Young Bucks are prepping to do with Adam Cole or whatever. Like, oh my God, just keep it simple for us, please.
Cool. And so going back to Magic and someone who's actually had some WWE talent on his show quite a few years ago now, the Masked Magician, and obviously his gimmick, I suppose you could say, is that he would reveal the tricks. And as someone yourself who's in Magic and that, and I would imagine you was quite young as these shows was coming out. What's your thoughts when these people were revealing the tricks, and what was the thoughts from the Magic community in general?
You know, I mean, initially, you know, I mean, I was pretty young, so I was not even at a level where that was affecting me. You know, that would have affected me because I wasn't like actively doing paid shows at that time, right? So that nothing that he was doing like was in you know, directly affecting me immediately. And but I was aware of it, but I also like was like there was, I don't want to sound like, now I'm going to sound like an old man, like, you know, get off my lawn and your rock and roll music's too loud. But like, there's like, and trying not to sound like that, but I think I'm going to end up sounding like it. But there's, in my opinion, there's just that respect of the art. You know, it's sort of like, I hate to keep, you know, talking about wrestling, but it's like never break kayfabe, right? There's just, you don't, even if it's something as simple as, oh, here's how it works. You get a paper clip, you tape it down, you take a rubber band, and then you know, if it's something that just ridiculously simple of how a trick is done, you don't just willy-nilly give it away, you know. Of course, people put out magic books, magic kits, magic DVDs, magic whatever, and there's places that are accessible in, major cities. There's magic stores, and online there's magic shops, right? It's just, but it's for, though, to get that information, people are willingly going through a multi-step process to obtain that secret, right? It's not just
a casual audience
at them. And whereas a lot of that, so I think because of that, there's been like a loss of respect of the art in that sense, and respect of the business, right? And again, I'm not trying to sound like an old man, but I think I am. Like, so when I was a kid, when The Masked Magician was coming out, I had heard, and I was under the understanding of, magicians don't do this, they don't do this, they don't do this. And I wanted to be a magician, and shit, like, if I want to be a magician, I got to act like one, right? And so how do I act like one? Well, here's some first couple steps that are literally written out right here, so I guess I'm going to follow those, and it was just, it's like the respect of it. And knowing too, like, even if it's not something that, is new, if it's something that's like an old thing, because there's unfortunately there's like an upswing now because of things like TikTok and YouTube and Facebook. There's a lot of people now giving away magic for clicks, but it's being disguised as something else, like pranks, for example. And then before you know it, they're exposing a magic trick under the guise of a prank, but it's clearly a fucking magic trick, and their justification is, for example, that, well, these are so old, magic needs to be updated and whatever. But what they're missing is there's only so many things you can do. There's only so many things. Something disappears, something appears, something floats, something changes places. You're limited only like 7 fucking things, and so how that's, presented, of course, changes and evolves with time. You don't see magicians, for example, borrowing handkerchiefs anymore. They don't even borrow money anymore. Now they borrow your cell phone. Value has changed as magic has evolved with time, because time changes, right? What people value. It used to be, if you had a handkerchief with your fucking monogram embroidered in it, you were a top shelf motherfucker, right? And so if the magician borrowed that, that's like nowadays giving them your iPhone 37 or whatever, right? So that, that's so people saying, magic needs to change. It is changing, and it has changed, but just because it's not fast enough for you, in your opinion, that just doesn't make sense to me. They're just trying to justify their prostitution of the industry, and that's too bad, because much like, in The Masked Magician, it gets exposed without people realizing what they're watching or what they're about to see, and now all of a sudden they're privy to to it. Now then it comes down to, does it sink in? Is it something that they're going to remember or not? I don't know, and there's no way of telling. Penn Teller, for example, expose magic when they perform. Not all the time, but many times. Their routines are based on exposing. Now, what they are exposing that makes them different than The Masked Magician or the prank video people is that the way they're exposing it is it's a casual exposure, artistically choreographed, and I'm choosing my words carefully, and presented in a way that is with respect to the art, because they lead you down the garden path, because you have now been made to believe that what they exposed is correct, which oftentimes it's not. They're even giving you a false explanation, but you're led to believe that this is how it's done. Seems plausible. And then they lead you down the garden path with that in mind, and then they turn on the sprinklers, so by the time they've led you to believe one thing, in the end, it's not even that, and you're even more blown away, because they're using what they said they were going to do to still fool you, but then they're not even doing that. There's so many layers. It's really well put together, so there's been, arguments to either side, but that, in my opinion, is one of the main differences, is that, Penn and Teller are still doing this presentation in a very, artistic way that has respect to the art and to those, that have come before and maybe will be coming as well. Because the other thing too is, something that might be considered old to one person that's going to expose it for whatever clicks and shares and, and monetization. Maybe it's a box that's shown empty and it's closed, and all of a sudden 5 chickens come out. I don't know, right? Well, if they expose how that works, but that's maybe something that's been a mainstay in certain shows for a long time. There's an example of this that has happened, where now the argument too is, doesn't matter how old you might think it is, there's somebody out there, more than one even, that maybe doesn't have the means to buy or acquire the fancier new, like, latest greatest magic that is out there, or maybe what's being created does not fit this style or this tricks presentation. And so by exposing it and by thinking it's okay to expose it, it's not, because now you're almost taking the spoon out of this dude's mouth, because that maybe is a big part of what he was doing in a routine in his show, and that's how he made his income, doing birthday parties or doing libraries, or there's lots of different levels, just like musicians or comedians or whatever. There's the pros that are way up top and they can't relate to what's going on down here anymore because it's been so long, or maybe they never even were able to work their way up because mom and dad paid for it. This happens a lot in magic, because magic, unfortunately, is one of the few talents that you can buy. They're unfortunately, there's a lot of people Milli Vanilliing as magicians that aren't, and to much success because they were able to cut corners or go through, the back door, because they were financially, funded by, mom and dad or something like that. So that meant that they could acquire and have, the best things of whatever, where there's a lot of others that don't. And so they have to work with what they have. And unfortunately, they've also been victim to, these exposures and stuff, which, it just kind of sucks because of that as well. It's not just about, exposing the magic trick and, oh, that's bad. It's also what's the damage down the line, that you're doing to people that perform for a living, or the up and comers, all of a sudden now, because magic is something that you can just buy for the most part. Granted, a lot of the real good shit takes a lot of time, practice, and rehearsal and dedication. But there is stuff that you can buy and push a button and, boom, somebody blackout, a bouquet of roses appears inside of an empty vase, haha. And so they can buy that and do that and make it go viral, and then expose the secret for another, layer of viral, shit. And they don't have, they don't have a talent. That's just something they bought, and that's a risky, dangerous, thing to maybe be, whether intentionally or unintentionally, encouraging or making the future generations think is going to be okay, which in my opinion, it is not. That's a very long-winded thing. Sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there.
No, it's well said. And we seem to keep going back to wrestling, but it's true. Obviously, we're growing up, we realize, wrestling's not, I don't like to say the word fake, but I like to say, what's the word?
Predetermined or whatever.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And we know, obviously, there's kayfabe and stuff like that. But when I see people blatantly on TV, so fake, you could say, but then you get some people defending it's well, it's fake anyway. I'm like, yeah, I know, and I know Rocky's fake, but when I'm watching it, I like to believe it's real. That disbelief, and I like to still believe it is when I'm watching it, like watching a TV or movie. So when I'm watching magic, in the back of my head, I know this rabbit ain't come out of nowhere, but I'm in this moment where I want to believe it's come out of nowhere, and I don't really appreciate when people's exposing all these secrets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's supposed to be an escape, and and disconnect from reality and that. Yeah, that's very, very similar. Like I was saying, exactly, very similar parallels between wrestling and magic, actually, in that sense. Yeah.
Do you remember the the one wrestler? What's he called now? He was in WCW back in the early 90s.
I know who you're talking about. I forgot his name.
It was like Phantasmo or something like that. He had like the weight.
Dude. Yeah, that was.
The mask.
Yeah, that was pretty rough. I do remember him. I don't remember anything about his matches. I do remember him though, you know.
Yeah.
And he had all kinds of terrible little gimmicks of confetti or something, and whatever. It's just brutal. It was pretty brutal.
Cool. So we'll get to the final segment of the show, I suppose you say. So it's Prime Time 9. So basically, it's to give the fans a chance to know you a little bit better. So I'm going to give you like 9 different topics and tell me what your favorite one is. So we'll start off, your favorite song.
Oof, man. I don't know. Okay. Sheesh. That really depends on the mood. When I've been on the boozer, I've been known to lose my shit for Whitney Houston, dance with somebody, but Ramones, Brain is Hanging Upside Down. That's one of my favorites. Shoot, there's a lot. And I mentioned, Sinatra earlier, and so I like a lot of his stuff. So like, my appreciation for music, my choice is very broad, got a broad range, broad spectrum. So it's really a lot of different stuff. But Tiffany, I think We're Alone Now. That's one of my pre-show rituals. If that's blasting from my dressing room, like don't knock, just come back when the song's over, because me and the birds are throwing down in there, whatever, trying to get pumped.
Whenever that song comes on now, I don't know if you've seen the movie Ted. I can't help but think of that scene of Giovanni.
I'd never seen it, but a buddy of mine sent me a meme of that and was like, "This is you." And I did look up the scene, and I was like, "Yes, that absolutely is." Yeah.
Cool. Favorite movie?
Sheesh, man. I like man, again, these are.
I need to make these a bit more easier in the future.
Dude, I'm like all over. Like, I'm very like indecisive with it. Like, I'm gonna say one thing today, and then like next week I'll be like, no, because I'm in a different mood now. Like, I'd rather watch that. So it'd be like a tie. There's a documentary called American Movie, which is hilarious. It's one of my favorite like movies like ever. It's a great documentary. It's hilarious, and I highly recommend it. Anybody if that's listening, if you haven't seen it, look up American Movie. And then I would have to say I think Walt Disney Peter Pan. It would be either that or Roger Rabbit. That's a good one. That's up there. But I'd go with Peter Pan then.
Awesome. Favorite food?
Spätzle is very good. I also like strawberry rhubarb pie, and I'm a sushi guy. I don't know.
Yeah. Town or city to play in?
Tampa, Florida is awesome. I love Tampa. New Orleans, Prague. I really like Prague, and Hamburg. Hamburg is I would say Tampa and Hamburg are like in the top 2. They're like right on the cusp. Yeah.
We keep going back to wrestling, but similar to Bret, he was pretty massive in Germany, and I've noticed, like, following your Instagram, you seem to be pretty popular in Germany.
Yeah, I've been going there for quite a few years, and really, really great, really huge supportive fan base over there that have been really awesome. And like there was one, I mean, I just did a couple shows there, right? And I mean, there was one fan that I think had been a fan for 11 years. You know, like remembered like first seeing like my shit on YouTube and then on TV and then coming to the shows live. And like, you know, when some of these fans are like at every show, sometimes multiple shows a tour, right? You just kind of you start seeing their familiar faces, right? And that was one fan. I was like, holy shit, that was pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, they're really great, you know, a supportive group over there. Yeah.
Cool. Favorite fan experience or worst fan experience or audience experience, I suppose you could say.
Yeah. I used to do these things because I would just get really bored, right, on tour, and I would just give away comps, right, to fans. But it would be fun. We'd make a contest out of it, you know. And I remember this was in Australia, and Honey Boo Boo was huge then. I don't know if Honey Boo Boo got big over in the UK, but you may be familiar with it. This like total fucking redneck family. Yeah. And they would make spaghetti, just absolutely disgusting, right? And they would just take like this spaghetti and put it in a bowl. Or no, sorry, they would boil the noodles. I think she would boil the noodles, but then she would melt butter and ketchup together, and that was the pasta sauce, and they called it sketty. So that was like the spaghetti, and it like was the most revolting. Like that's disgusting, right? And I didn't know how big Honey Boo Boo was like in Australia or anything like that. And I just threw like a tweet out because this was when Twitter was still pretty big, and I tweeted like first person to bring a Tupperware of Honey Boo Boo sketty to the box office gets 2 tickets for tonight, right? And I got like these unfortunately multiple ones, so there could only be one, you know, only one winner, and there was one that got there first, right? And because they would just let me, they didn't like back then. The Triangle Show didn't really pay attention to what I was doing, so I was just doing all kinds of shit like that on my own. And yeah, all of a sudden this like onslaught of disgusting, stinky, ketchup, buttery, sketty was arriving to the box office with, you know, these fans and stuff. And of course I had to go with the first one, and it was this dude, and I think he brought his girlfriend, and they were really nice, you know, nice people. That was, you know, that was pretty interesting. There, I mean, there's been some like some scary ones, of course. Like there was, I don't want to get into it because without, because I don't know what's happened to some of these people, and if they happen to be listening, I'm not trying to speak ill of them, especially if maybe there might potentially be some underlying other things that make them act certain ways. So I don't want to say anything specific, but like people definitely coming from great distances, under the wrong impression and popping out from behind dumpsters. There was one time we had to actually put a picture of one at the back stage door, because, you know, sometimes people wait at stage door, because it was that amount of like, this person could be unstable, you know, and scary. But no, like other than that, most of them are pretty fun and pretty interesting. And like one time there was an elderly couple I met at the hardware store, like elderly, right? Like normally not a demographic that I would think I'd be, you know, appealing to, and had seen me like on TV, and the wife was describing how the husband liked to flick his floss at her, chase her around or whatever, like I did to Howie Mandel, you know, on America's Got Talent. So that was, you know, when you run into and hear stories like that, that's pretty cool. Then there's other stuff. I don't want to share it because, again, there's the other side of stuff that's, you know, very personal to some people. You know, it's the ones like those though that it's like, shit, I'm just doing magic tricks, you know. Like there's been a lot where like I get, you know, emails like from people who have stopped from committing suicide and stuff, or even, you know, like, and then there's like the other ones that are like because of how I present myself and perform, you know, maybe, and this has happened where they were like, you know, trans and stuff. And some of these are younger folks, you know, like teenagers or whatever. And that's made them feel seeing me do something like this happened when my Foolis thing came out, because that, you know, was another, like I said, kind of TV exposure thing to a large group very quickly. And so I you know, still even people will run across that clip for whatever reason, that one stands out. And I get emails from them saying yeah, like, you know, that I didn't feel comfortable being who I really am. This is who I really am. And, you know, when it's that stuff is crazy to not crazy in a bad way, but, you know, like I was saying, I'm just doing magic. It's like, and when you kind of hear like, and especially when it's younger folks, you know, kids that are like 14 or 15, right? And they're feeling a certain way, you know, and they just saw a clip of me doing a magic trick on TV, but for whatever reason that inspired them to feel that it's okay for them. It took that for them to feel that they're okay. It's just crazy. And, you know, and that's where, even, you know, to come kind of in a circle again, why I think it's important to respect, you know, the secrets in the art of magic, because that's a whole thing that, like, I get a lot. Like, I mean, there's been so many times where I've had people on stage that I've been interacting with, and I can see self-harm scars on them, you know, and then later find out, yeah, like that's what they used to do. And but watching my videos or whatever, they've laughed, they've just felt like inspired to change their way of thinking that was making them do that, you know. Nuts. Like, again, not nuts or crazy in a negative way, but just I still have a hard time comprehending that. And that I might just, so sorry I went off on a tangent again, but like fan moments like that, that's really cool. And not in an ego sense of like, look, you know, look what I did to, you know, to help that person, tell me more, you know. It was just more like, oh my God, don't tell me that, because that makes me like, oh geez, you know, I'm glad, you know, everything's cool, but, you know, that's just some of the really humbling and honoring, you know, really, you know, you feel honored that something that is so magic tricks, you know, but still you were able to make an audience person feel wonder, amazement, etc., and then something even more positive beyond that. You know, it's pretty deep, you know.
It is. It's pretty great, and it's not like in magic, music, TV, film, wrestling, even like a radio show or podcasts. Like, and I haven't had a review to say someone like, don't know, I've had people say they enjoy my show and things like that, and I appreciate everyone who listens. But I've seen other people's shows and people who watches these shows, people who are struggling, and when they watch these shows or listen to these podcasts or such, it gives them like, you could say just something to not to live for just for that, but it helps them cope with whatever they're doing, and they can find enjoyment in this certain thing where in everything else they don't find enjoyment. And that's one thing about magic, and that's why I said to you earlier, like using the wrestling term, I want it keeping kayfabe, because people find an enjoyment. Say I watch magic the same as I watch a movie. I'm invested in it, and I just want to enjoy it, and it's an escape from everything else that's happening around you.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So next one. I don't know if you're a video game player, but what's your favorite video game?
No, I'm not. I was a little bit when I was younger, but no, and it was just during the pandemic I got into Fortnite, and you know, and actually one of the things, if you follow, it's called the Anti-Gaming Gaming Show. If you look up Anti-Gaming Gaming Show on Instagram or on Twitch, we're actually gonna start it back up in February. But it's Fortnite. That's the only game I know how to play. My buddies are gamers. I am not. But none of us had ever played Fortnite, but they got into it during the pandemic. And this is a crazy streaming show that we kind of created and put together. And that's the extent of my gaming. And the whole point of it, too, is that we actually suck. And so it's like, you know, that's why it's the Anti-Gaming Gaming Show. We're not really gamers, but And so of course we suck at it, and then the object is for the people watching to fuck with us live, and stuff. So I mean, if look it up, it'll all explain itself if people want to see it. But that's the extent of my video game experience, really. So none, pretty much.
Cool. And last couple, favorite hobby.
I don't really have one. I mean, I watch wrestling, I watch hockey. That's like my sport level. I play bass, but I don't really do anything. I don't really have time for anything else. You know, I'm essentially an independent contractor. I'm self-employed. Yeah. It's not like the bat phone is ringing every day, you know, so I'm still chasing and still, you know, trying to keep the machine, whatever you want to call it, the shark swimming and stuff. So yeah, I listen to a lot of podcasts. That's pretty much it. Just stuff, you know, background noise. That's all I really have going.
Cool. And final one, funniest road story.
This is where these are ones that it's like, man, of course, any of the good ones, you can't really share maybe, but
we're not PG, so you can say what you want.
Well, yeah, no, I'm just trying to think of, like, you know, incriminating type stuff, man. Though, I mean, not incriminating, but even like embarrassing. Like, should I even be talking about this in case the person, you know, I had I was doing a thing for a while where I was just bored, and I was like pranking one of the acts in particular on this show, on this tour, and yeah, just bored. And so I would just fuck with his dressing room when he was, you know, on stage. Now, not fuck with his dressing room in the sense of like anything destructive, but I would booby trap it, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I like toilet papered the inside and, you know, stuff like that. And so there was, we were in Australia, and there was, you know, the theater we were in, Performing Arts Center, and I had caught one of the tech guys hiding in my dressing room closet. So obviously, like, the game was afoot, you know, we were like, shit was going down. So I booby trapped my dressing room with a bag of flour. So like I rigged this whole like Hardy Boys, like the book, you know, thing where you know, like I had opened the door and I figured out just enough so that I knew how far to open the door so that I could slide in and out of my dressing room. And I marked it on the carpet in a piece of tape. So I knew I would open the door only so far and I could get in and get out. If it opened beyond that, it would trip the cable that I had rigged holding the flour, which I had taken out a ceiling tile to like rig it up in there so it would flip and dump and dump flour all. I don't even remember where I got the bag of flour, but it would dump this flour all over the person that was in. So I essentially would antique them right live. And so I had doves with me because I was doing my bird spot. And so I had left a note on the dressing room door to the cleaning staff, please do not clean my dressing room for the safety of the bird, you know. And I left like my garbage bin outside the door so they don't need to come in, right? Because I left it rigged up, you know, because I was like, I put a lot of time into this. If it's not happening today, it'll happen tomorrow. Somebody, they're going to try to fuck with me, right? And so, but what had happened was, you know, whatever, I, you know, go out that night and, you know, with one of the crew guy that I had busted, you know, trying to get my room. And we went, you know, to some bar, whatever, and, you know, carried on and, you know, like you do, you know, on the road, partied it up and what have you. And I remember I got a call at like 5 a.m, you know, and I'm just like groggy and all fucking, you know, whatever. We have all day until the show that night. So I just planned on sleeping, you know, late and whatever. And so it was the producer, and he was like, you're on speakerphone. Do you have flour in your dressing room? And no, he said, what was in the bag? What's in the bag in your dressing room? I can't remember how he said it initially. And so I was like, what is this? You know, what's going on here? So I was like, no, I don't know. Don't know what you're talking about, you know? So I just denied it. Right. And then he was like, no, you're on speakerphone. We know there was something in your dressing room. Yes or no? Was that flour? And now I'm going, what the fuck? Yes. Yeah, it was flour. Yeah. Anyways, long story short, the whole concept had like backfired on me. The building, the Performing Arts Center, was, I guess, technically a government facility, right? Or a government owned, and because of how it is, they have security that walks a beat through the whole building every night. And even though I put the note on the door for cleaning and nobody to enter, he still was required to go inside. So he had to, regardless, he still had to go inside every dressing room to check to make sure it's all clear, right? And this dude, I guess, whatever, had never experienced any sort of interaction of any kind with any sort of threat or danger, being the security guard, because he went ahead and opened the door. My gag had worked because he triggered the whole setup. He got doused in the flour, but all he saw was white powder, and gets it on him, and is now convinced it's a dry chemical, right?
Yeah.
And runs out of the building and goes to the hospital, right? Abandoned, like leaves his job, and this happened at like 3 a.m, right? So he's probably going through with a flashlight, fucking goes in, boom, gets nailed with this shit. And what the fuck, and can't get it off, runs out. Like, because when I came in the next day, I could see, like, in the flour, like, you could see the footprints, and, like, clearly, like, this panicky, like, what the fuck? And then the footprints going, down the hall. And so he was convinced that it was a dry chemical and a terrorist attack. And there was a dry, because he's at the hospital and he's convinced himself it's burning, and the doctors are going, we don't know what this is. It's fucking flour, which doesn't tell you a whole lot about the Brisbane, Australia, like fucking medical, shit. It's fucking flour, right? And so I guess like all this stuff had gone down where they were calling the producer and the local government people had to get involved. Like, I don't know what they have, FBI over there, but something where they're having to potentially call in and investigate because they think it was like some sort of terrorist attack, because they couldn't figure out what the hell this shit was. It came from the ceiling. He didn't, know. And so they were like not going to let people in because they didn't know, like, was this anthrax? Like, what the fuck is this shit? And it's like, dude, it's fucking flour, like, look in the ceiling, there's a back, so that was one thing that happened. I can probably share that story. So that happened.
We're not topping that. Cool. Well done. It's been a pleasure to have you. But before we go, tell everyone where they can find you, your YouTube, your social media, and your upcoming gigs.
Yeah, I mean, you can just go to Dan Sperry, DANSPERRY.com. That's my website. That'll portal you out to everything else: Instagram, YouTube. I don't go on Twitter so much. I don't go on there at all anymore. And Facebook, it's just Dan Sperry Official. Everything else is at Dan Sperry. And, DanSperryStore.com. That's where everybody can get their fancy schmancy things with all their Christmas money that they got.
Awesome. Well done. Absolute pleasure. And yeah, hopefully once everything's calmed down, you get over here in the UK, we'll have to do this next time in person.
For sure. Yeah, we'll do it definitely.
Cool. Thanks very much. And yeah, hopefully see you soon.
Right on. Thanks for having me.